Wow, do we have a show today? Seth Kamens is over there. I'm Sean Palmer, Seth and Sean Sports Radio. Seth, you're really loud on the mic, so maybe lower the microphone a little bit. I'm hearing a ton of feedback here, and now I can't hear you at all. Oh, I read the lips, but I can't hear you at all. That's okay.
I thought it was pretty good, actually.
Yeah, it was good. So there we go. So we have a great show today. It's one of our more exciting shows that we've had over the last couple of months. We are talking name, image, and likeness, and we have a special guest, Malcolm Grace of George Mason University. He is a Syracuse alum, which certainly helps in my boat, but he is the actual, I think, Deputy Director of Compliance for George Mason.
Why don't we explain why this is? Because we talk about a lot of things with sports. Why is this show exciting to us? Because it's the Deputy Director of Compliance. It doesn't sound like it.
Well, to tell you the truth, auditing is your boat, not mine. But
nobody ever said that was exciting.
No, normal course of business. So we've touched upon this in the last couple of weeks. If you joined the show, so name, image, and likeness. So there was news out yesterday that the quarterback of Alabama, who has Bryce Young, who has yet to take a snap in the NFL, will be earning in the NCAA, not even in the NFL, has yet to take a snap in college, is going to be earning $1 million this year through sponsorships. And this is the first year that that's taking place. A Supreme Court ruling stated that the college farce, the NCAA farce that restricted limitations on earning money outside of sports in general, or outside the field is a better example, is exactly that, a farce. So all of these athletes can now use their name, their image, or their likeness, which is why it's NIL, to make money. And that is some big, big ticket items here when you get to colleges such as Alabama or UCLA or Texas, any of these big colleges. Those quarterbacks, those point guards are going to earn major money. And while Malcolm is the compliance director at George Mason, look, George Mason made a Final Four within the last 10 years.
No, I don't think it was it within the last 10 years?
Okay, let's say the last 15.
Yeah, I think 2006.
Okay, well, last 15 to 20. So let's assume that happens, or even if that doesn't happen, the point guard in George Mason is going to be well known within the Northern Virginia territory. Yeah. And it's interesting to see, is this going to make life easier or harder? It's obviously going to make life easier for the athletes. They can earn money. But how does this affect the college atmosphere in general? And what limitations are there? And this is where we call in experts. Look, I love the salary cap, but I'm really not a capologist, so to speak. If there was a big issue with the cap, we'd bring in somebody there. We have a rudimentary knowledge of most sports, and we have a good knowledge of many sports. But there are certain rules that come available or
that are
come
beyond our scope, especially to start off with.
And this is basically the same as me reading the Joe Paterno decision the day of and being able to dissect 85 pages of a Joe Paterno ruling. I wasn't able to do it. I could read it as much as I could. Let's bring in the expert that in compliance, who obviously has to deal with this on a day-to-day basis. And Malcolm will be joining us in 10 minutes on the show, which is great.
10 minutes to talk about what happened in the last 24 hours.
Well, I mean, Chris Middleton led the Milwaukee Bucks to an NCAA championship.
He did score 17 last night.
He did.
There's an old joke that Al Attles, who was a pretty well-known basketball player and a Hall of Fame coach, I believe.
A general manager, too.
What was scored combined with a guy to score 117 points in a game. And he asked him how it felt. And he said it felt pretty good, except he only had 17 and Wilt had the other 100.
Right.
Welcome to Giannis and Chris World last night.
Welcome to Giannis and anybody last night.
Giannis actually and Bobby Portis World last night.
Yeah.
Bobby Portis was the second best player on that team. And they look, you were kept going on this is your mea culpa, I think.
It is. Look, I have no problem admitting when I'm wrong. I am wrong quite a bit. And and Giannis definitely proved it last night. Not to take away from the impact that Drew Holiday had, by the way.
No.
Now, scoring-wise, Drew Holiday did very little. I think he went 5 for 20 or something along those lines. But defensively, I mean, his work on Devin Booker, his work on Chris Paul, takes away a big part of that Phoenix offense.
Because that was not the Devin Booker that we've seen the first 15 games of the playoffs or 20 games of the playoffs. He looked tired. The shot was off. And Paul had a couple nice plays and his stats were pretty good, but he was not the dominant person he needed to be in the game 6 road game.
I will tell you the thing that stood out to me about Chris Paul wasn't what he did. It's the turnovers when he made them. It was very strange to see a guy that we label as a top 5, maybe top 3 point guard of all time, dribbling down the court and just turning the ball over. Like that seemed to be inopportune turnovers at inopportune times. And they just seemed very careless. I'm not sure how else to describe it. They were down 6. He turns the ball over on a dribble. That's not what I generally remember of Chris Paul.
Yeah, well, this happened years ago in a game, I want to say game 5 against Oklahoma City with Westbrook, where just a couple really mind-boggling turnovers. This wasn't quite as bad. Obviously, the stakes were higher. But at the end of the day, you're talking about an all-time performance. I said, I've been watching sports since I'm 45. I've been watching sports and reading sports since I was 3. The only thing I think I would put above it as a game-clinching performance was Magic Johnson in 1980.
And you didn't watch that, right?
I saw it. I've read about it. I know what happened.
Right. I'm just saying, right? Right. No, I'm just saying. Look, when we talk about stuff, sometimes we talk about it as we've read. Sometimes we talk about it as we've seen. I just want to point out to people, you and I did not watch that game.
But the idea with Magic is he was a rookie point guard who was playing center on the road against a very, very good Philly team led by Julius Erving. And he went for 42, 15, and 7 on the road as a rookie at a position he never played. There's not much. I don't know how you could do better than that. I don't know how it's possible. Giannis at 50 and 14, incredible. Tim Duncan's quadruple double in 2003, incredible. Jordan 45 in game 6 and 98, incredible. I can't put anyone above him for that one performance. I don't think you can go further than that.
It's interesting to see last night. Giannis played the 5 for the majority of that game.
Brook Lopez was a non-entity for the most part, other than like a 4-minute span.
And he did have quite a 4-minute span. That 4 minutes was very interesting to see him harken back to his Stanford days. Him being able to put the ball on the floor and drive to the hoop was quite impressive for a guy that we last remember with the New Jersey Nets. And I call them New Jersey because they were in New Jersey. It's kind of hard when you're looking at a team that was already in a different city. But the fact is, Giannis played out of control last night, and that's not in a bad way. And the best part, hold on one second. The best part was his free throws. Yeah. The best part was his free throws. It's so hard to look. We've seen it with so many different athletes unable to hit the easiest of shots, the shot that you're able to, because you're not in a rhythm and you have to get in a rhythm. And free throws, while they are free, and my grandfather used to say that basketball was always a rigged sport, because if you get paid millions of dollars and you can't hit the only shot where it's free, how can you say that this is not a rigged sport? And you know what? I looked at him and I go, look, even the best hit 90%. But
you look at what he's gone through the last 5 games, all through the playoffs. The 10 seconds, Chris Paul pretty much kind of talking after game 5, how he knows he knows in his head he's going to miss him going forward. He shot 17 for 19, and the last free throw he missed was with 6 seconds left, and he was irrelevant. He was brilliant last night. And his speech afterwards was fantastic. This is it's an extraordinary victory for a very likable team in a city where we haven't seen a championship. We haven't seen a championship in Milwaukee since 71 with Kareem and Oscar. And it was, it's the flyby city as people talk about. It's a city you don't give much thought to. But this team has had, look, they were good in the 80s with Cummings and Pressey and Moncrief and Robertson. And they had good teams with Michael Redd and with Ray Allen and Glenn Robinson. And it was really I thought it wasn't a greatly played series. We talked about this last week. These are not two great teams. There are two teams, very flawed, but very enjoyable, played very hard. And it just looked like Phoenix ran out of steam last night. I think the end of game 5, Ayton looked exhausted. They just looked like they had run their course. And for a team that hadn't been to a playoffs in 10 years, to get to a game 6 anyway, it's just an incredible accomplishment to begin with.
So there are two things just to wrap up because we do have Malcolm waiting for us. But number one, these were two teams. That's the best part. Like Giannis is the MVP. I get it. Giannis, or two-time MVP, maybe not this year, but Giannis is the best player. I have said it. Giannis is the best player on that team. But he doesn't view – he's not, hey, everybody circle around me. I need the ball at all times. I'm going to distribute it as I wish, and I'm going to run the floor just like everybody else. This is not a special Giannis play. This is not a special Chris Paul play. This is not a special Devin Booker play. It was two teams, and more, I feel like basketball is an individual sport, and it has. Look, you look at the Nets, right? They're three individuals and everybody else. I mean, there's no other way to call it. You look at most of these teams, if you look at the Wizards and you have Bradley Beal and Westbrook, and that's it. And then there's everybody else. You had a $40 million point guard in Chris Paul. You had a $35 million, I don't know what you call him, a center or a power forward. Or look, Giannis could dribble up. You can call him whatever you want. But they played as a team. And it was it may not have been it may not have been the best basketball that you'll ever see, but it certainly was the most enjoyable basketball I've seen in a very long time.
It was a really fun series. It reminds me of the first run that Golden State had, where as good as Curry was, as good as Thompson was, as good as Green was, it felt like a team as opposed to the individual. And I enjoyed it immensely.
By the way, the best line of the entire night was Jeff Van Gundy, when they peered out over where Milwaukee was and goes, Dr. Fauci is not happy. Like, it was the best line of the entire night. 60,000 people outside. And you had commented during the game that what an event that would have been to be a part of. I don't know if you've ever been part of an event like that. I was outside Boston Garden when the Bruins won. No. And it was elation. And that was maybe 1/10 the size of what was in, I don't know what they call it, the deer park, the deer ground, the fertile ground, the hunting ground. I don't know what they call it. But either way, whatever it was.
The closest thing, and now we'll stop after this, the closest thing that I can remember to this was 2003 Maryland Duke.
Yeah.
When Steve Blake stole the ball. And
Steve Blake stole the ball?
From Jason Williams. I remember it well.
Steve Blake stole the ball?
And there were I was at a bar, and there were tens of thousands of people just sprinting to the bars.
Yeah.
And that was the year they won the title, and nothing like it.
So we're gonna bring on Malcolm now. Malcolm, how are you, sir? Thank you so much for joining. I'm trying to make you the big guy. There we go. All right. Because you are the big guy. Malcolm Grace from George Mason, thank you so much for joining us here on the Seth and Sean Sports Radio Show.
My pleasure, gentlemen. I appreciate the invite. Anytime a fellow Orange reaches out, I try to help out where I can. I love seeing the hat, man. So
that's why I love the hat. And both Seth and I did live in the DMV for a little bit. So myself for 8 years, and Seth went to University of Maryland.
Okay, so I was there for
10. So we've both been there for quite a while, and we know very well of George Mason. We're happy to have you on to explain NIL, because you're looking at, as we explained earlier in the day, the two of us, we're good sports fans. We know a lot about sports, but this is the greatest single impact, as far as I'm concerned, since Title IX. I don't think that there is any greater impact since then. And how is this affecting both the student athletes and the athletic departments? Because it's a two sides. So if you can give us just a little synopsis of what your recap is on NIL, because you are the expert as opposed to us who are just a modicum of fans and would understand, that would be great. So you can give it to our fans.
Yeah, so gladly. So, I'll give you a quick 5 minutes of what we've told our student athletes in a rules ed session on June 30th, right before all this went down, is essentially, as of tomorrow, you as a student athlete, you can form your own business and get paid, and you can advertise it using your name, image, and likeness. You can go out and set up your own business. You can get paid, by advertising it for your name, image, and likeness. And you can also go out in the world and have existing companies pay you to endorse or use their products. So all of those things, as you all know full well, immediately rendered kids, student athletes, ineligible just a few short weeks ago. And now we're in this new world where it's, in a lot of ways, the opportunities are wide open because, the NCAA put together some proposals, but due to some Department of Justice correspondence and waiting on the United States Congress to come up with federal rules, it's kind of wide open right now. So states can do different things. And here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, we don't yet have a state bill on the books. So we're kind of in a odd position right now where we don't have a law that we have to follow, and there's only a sort of a broadly worded NCAA memo that we have to follow.
Sure.
Those are creates opportunities for us, but we also have to be mindful of any risks if we go too far.
Well, I guess that kind of leads to the next question. What are there? I mean, there has to be some version of limitations on this. I don't know where the line is or where it becomes gray. At what point does the NCAA step in? Does the NCAA still have the power to step in? Because that's been an issue that really this has negated whatever influence the NCAA has,
right,
and which has been greatly argued over the years anyway. It's negated it even further to a point of almost irrelevancy.
Yeah. So specifically on the NIL stuff, I would say if an NIL deal falls into that broad category of pay for play, then the NCAA has jurisdiction over that deal. Barring that right now, there isn't much jurisdiction that the NCAA has because it's all been ceded to the states. So if under some set of circumstances, information was given to the NCAA that, your podcast paid a student athlete, $10,000. He was the star player on the University of Maryland's basketball team, but he was thinking of transferring, and you paid him that $10,000 not to really do any work, but solely to get him to stay at the University of Maryland because you're a big fan. That's pay for play. The NCAA can step in and impose penalties for something like that. But the way the NCAA's proposals were written earlier in their current rules, they're not trying to determine what is fair market value and what isn't, what is and is not necessarily an inducement or a benefit in this space. So it's kind of up to the kid. They can go out if they're worth $1 million deal, they can earn that $1 million deal. The NCAA is not going to scrutinize it and look at it. The institutions are supposed to have some disclosure rules where they'll look at what it is, and those are things we're doing on our campus. But yeah, right now, until the NCAA publicizes their rules, which will be after the federal government, the United States Congress, comes up with a federal bill, and the NCAA said it's up to the states at the moment.
So the lovely part is now we're waiting on Congress, which it seems like everybody in the world waits on Congress. But that's okay. When steroids came in, we had hearings, so maybe we'll have NIL hearings as well very soon.
The funny, I'll share. In my former life, I worked on the Hill, so I was in the hearing room with Kurt Schilling and when Juan Dixon was in there. So that's I know from firsthand that Congress does not move quickly. So
no, they only move quickly when there's money at stake. So let's see if there's money that influences them. And that comes to one of Seth's primary examples here. So I'm a booster. I am a booster for, I'm not going to say Syracuse because I'm not, but let's say Alabama, because if I'm going to get anybody declared ineligible, let's let it be Alabama.
Wouldn't you choose Duke?
Maybe. I'm going to get to football, so no, it's Alabama. So I'm a booster of Alabama. I want the quarterback in high school to go to Alabama. What prevents me from just getting him $150,000 in cameos? And he's obviously getting paid for the cameo. He's not signing anything that says he will go based on the cameo, but hell, he's getting $150,000 from a booster. Is there anything that prevents that? And obviously, there's nothing written down.
Well, there's nothing that prevents it.
Okay.
I would say, if I'm working in compliance at the University of Alabama and we're recruiting that kid and he's our primetime player coming in, I'd ask for all the information on it, but there's nothing to stop him from signing those endorsement deals, getting that money right now, and taking advantage of those opportunities. It's there. Now, I think that's the fear that we all heard about on the front end, right? That this is just going to end up being a big recruiting inducement and the big boys are going to have an advantage because, they have all the revenue coming in from football and they can use that to, just as a recruiting tool. But I guess that's okay. I mean, if you're enticed to go to Alabama or Syracuse or Maryland or whatever because they have a big shiny football stadium or basketball arena, how's that any different than getting enticed to go there because they have really lucrative, permissible NIL opportunities?
Right, and I think the word is permissible, right? So It's just a matter of how. It's not a bag of money; it's just cryptocurrency at this point. So it's kind of blue chips, 2021 style, as opposed to a foul is not a foul unless the referee, whoever that referee is, and I think that's the hardest part is that nobody knows who that ref is right now. Is it the states? Is it Congress? The NCAA doesn't really have any jurisdiction, so it's just a matter of figuring that part out. Seth, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that kind of leads to another one of my questions. So Kim English, I think, is your head coach, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. He's recruiting a star point guard. Typically, you were recruiting based on your vicinity. You were recruiting based on the coaches on a variety of things. How much of you're based in the Northern Virginia, a lucrative endorsement area. Does that now play a part in his recruitment of trying to bring someone in, making it seem like a better place to go? It seems like I know it sounds strange, but it almost changes the way you think about recruit. It's like another added part of the recruiting philosophy at this point. Yes.
And we all knew that was going to happen. It was inevitable that was going to happen. And, those of us on the administrative side of this NCAA college sports enterprise are in our own ways trying to be competitive in that way, right? We want to have a framework for NIL. We want to, be able to educate our student athletes and show that we're doing as much as we can for them to maximize their opportunities. So if the institutions are trying to make sure that our student athletes are prepared and know what they can do and make it as easy as possible for them to get deals and bring in a little bit of money, coaches, of course, are going to do and say the same thing. And
it seems like backwards from where it used to be. Like the NBA would recruit to New York because you get to play in Madison Square Garden and earn all the endorsements. And now Kevin Durant could play anywhere and get the same endorsement, but the college player may not be able to play anywhere. And now he's the one soliciting endorsements. Right. Can they solicit endorsements, or is it just people that – so you can put out a you could put out, look, Buddy Boeheim has put out shorts and all this material, right? But can he go to, or anybody else go to specific companies and say, look, I'm willing to do this for this? Is that permitted? Or does it have to go one way from the solicitor to the athlete?
No, I mean, the student athletes can reach out, but the institutions can't. So as long as the institutions aren't out there trying to play matchmaker, that they can't do. But the student athletes can put their services out there for sale, put it on social media, go door to door. If that's how they want to try to find their deals, that's perfectly okay under the rules.
So how does this make your life? Is it easier, harder, a little bit of both? I would think that the door's swung open, right? So you have less, I guess, oversight. But at some point now, the doors have swung wide open, and you got Pandora's box. So how does this, the compliance department, how does it affect that?
Right now, as I mentioned, it's primarily more paperwork for disclosure stuff. So create a form, tell us what you're doing. When you sign a deal, we're going to ask you to share the terms of that deal with us. There's that side of it, and that does make our lives a little bit more complicated. But, the flip side is, our coaches and we as administrators don't want our, student athletes getting screwed, right? So some of these companies are far more sophisticated. They've been doing this stuff for a lot longer than the student athletes have. And, they might put a bad deal out there or offer something that's not in the best interest of the student athlete. So, we're trying to help our student athletes learn to be mindful of that stuff. But it's right now for us, at least at George Mason, we're helping kids with the deals that they have. It's not a ton with our student athletes yet, but they're getting creative. They're trying to find ways, to your point, to go out and find deals for themselves. So we expect a lot more to come.
How is this going to impact when you have obviously the revenue generating sports, basketball, football, and then you have a lot of other sports which are not revenue generation. I guess, how do you think this is going to impact that split? Is it going to be, because, look, you could have the world's best, you have this, we're doing with the Olympics in a week. You have a guy who's going to be in the Olympics for swimming. You put it, there's still no name recognition. Right. So there's always been this fight between basketball and football, and then between basketball and football and really every other sport. Yeah. And now it's going to get even bigger, most likely, because now they can go after football players, they can go after basketball players, they can go after everyone else, but there's not as much. It doesn't have the same impact.
Yeah, I think at those big schools, right? If you play tennis at Alabama, let's say, you've seen that divide. It's been clear that football gets a whole lot of benefits and attention that tennis doesn't, right? That's obvious. What I think is actually kind of cool is that some of the smaller sports, and it's not big, 4, 5, 6-figure deals, but they're getting some opportunities to, endorse a product on social media, use a product on social media. And it may not be anything more than a couple of dollars or some free gear or apparel or product in the mail. But those opportunities are coming. So as an institution as a whole, what is more palatable about name, image, and likeness than, when we get into the area of paying players for actually practicing and competing, is that it's outside money. So, we try to use all of our resources to make it as lucrative, for lack of a better word, or give as many of our student athletes opportunities that we can. But it's not, we're not really seeing a situation where there's jealousy or envy, or the revenue is so skewed to the revenue sports that is causing, internal culture issues or anything like that. It's more, so far, what I've seen, it's kind of good for the smaller sport athletes, the Olympic sport athletes, because they're getting a chance to, at least get a couple of bucks and get a little bit of attention.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Those players, let's say the tennis player who you were just stating before, if he gave out lessons, or he or she gave out lessons and got paid, he or she would be declared ineligible, correct? And now, even if now that person is able to do that, so that's maybe not to the extent that the football player gets the cameo for $100,000, but they do get to make money off their name, their image, and their likeness, correct? Even if, like you said, it is a couple of bucks. It's still $50 more than they were able to do before, and certainly $50 more than they were being ineligible before, which would have made all the difference. Is that correct?
Yeah. So there was some previous NCAA rules where you could do fee for lessons, but again, you couldn't advertise it, wearing your school gear and advertising the fact that you were a student athlete. You'd have to put some random name or advertise it in some way that didn't identify you as a student athlete. But now, yes, you can go out there, you can say you're a student athlete at this school, do fee for lessons, do your own camps. And those are opportunities for some of those smaller sport athletes that give them some revenue generating opportunities that weren't there before. I've had times in the past where I've had to tell student athletes that they couldn't do babysitting services using their athletic department photo. You have to use a different photograph. So
that's sad.
That's
just sad.
Yeah.
Just
so
sad.
Those are those things that the rules, some of those limitations that were there before. But now, use your status as a student athlete. You can identify your school. And for those smaller sport athletes, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now I know you're 3 weeks into this, so there's still a lot of moving parts and kind of you've never really had to deal. I don't think you've had to deal particularly with the agents, or if you've dealt with them as someone's graduating 4 years down the road.
Right.
Now you have agents that are going to be soliciting high school players. How is that kind of playing along, for lack of a better term? How is that correlate? How does the athletic department, the agent, how does everyone play in the same sandbox for the most part without? And I'm not articulating it particularly well, but I think you know where I'm going with it.
Yeah, I do, and I think I don't think all of us are going to see the effect of that for another year, because right now, amateurism, professional activity for kids that are still in high school, you have to send all your information to the NCAA Eligibility Center. They scrub it. If you would see that a lot with international student athletes, for example, who might have played soccer in a professional league and worked with a recruiting service or an agent over there. And there has to be a whole submission of documents and proof that it wasn't a professional athlete situation, right? So I think after we had, a few months, close to a year under our belt of doing this, you'll just start to see a requirement probably through the NCAA Eligibility Center, disclose who your agent is, what your name, image, and likeness activities are. That's a guess. If it's not the current NCAA Eligibility Center, it'll be that third-party administrator that they were talking about that never ended up getting hired. But it'll be something like that where prior to being declared eligible to compete for college sports, you have to show that your agent was not marketing you as an athlete, only marketing you for, name, image, and likeness opportunities.
Malcolm, did your job become easier or harder in the last 3 weeks?
It's become harder. It's become harder, but it's become harder because we don't have any concrete rules yet. That's the part that's been hard. My previous institution, Villanova, with that basketball program and some of the stuff they had there, I'm sure it's a lot more complicated there, or a place like Alabama that we talked about. George Mason, we're still getting our feet wet on it. When our teams really start blowing up, it'll be a different animal for us, but it's harder, and it's more just because we don't know if what we're doing is going to end up causing a violation or impacting somebody's eligibility or not. So it's harder, but we expect it'll get easy in the next few months, hopefully.
That's fair enough. Malcolm, this has been great. Thank you so much for taking the time with us. You definitely explained this so much better than anybody else that we could go to. So I really do appreciate your time.
My pleasure, gentlemen. Appreciate you inviting me, and I had a good time. Thank you.
Have a great day. Thanks
you
so
all
much.
as well.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That was Malcolm Grace of George
stuff.
Mason University. That was amazing stuff. Really, we loved it. Thank you so much, Malcolm. And look, he's an SU alum, so he can't be bad, right? I mean, there's no way.
Wait. One step at a time, man. But no, that was really, really good.
That was really, really good. And we hope to have Malcolm on maybe in a couple of months where we can get the fallout from this and figure out the next steps. Look, he said that it would take about a year for this to come to fruition. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this shakes out.
Yeah, it's like everything, as we said, every once in a while you have something that completely transitions the way we're used to seeing something. This completely transitions the way we watch college sports and the way we see college sports. And agree with it, disagree with it, it's irrelevant at this point. And now we see how it plays out. Because
I think the recruiting, Seth, is ridiculous. Like we talked before, and I brought up the Kevin Durant situation because I really believe it's true. Go back 20 years. Go back before the internet, right? Where everything was local markets, where when you recruited to New York, you recruited to New York. You didn't recruit to New York and everything else that's on the internet. You recruited to New York, and the endorsement dollars for New York were so much bigger than, say, the endorsement dollars for the Seattle Supersonics. So when a guy was a free agent,
you're dating yourself nicely on that one.
Oh, I could use Detroit Pistons too. I mean, I'm just looking at a smaller city compared to New York. New York used to be the mecca of basketball because it was the mecca of the world. And now when it comes time to endorsements, there is no mecca. Kevin Durant could sign with the Memphis Grizzlies and still have a Jordan deal or an Adidas deal or a worldwide deal. And I know I keep using Kevin Durant, but we can use anybody in that concept. The NCAA is not like that. College sports are localized sports for all intents and purposes. You go into the gym in Georgia, in Atlanta, those guys know more about recruiting than I could ever hope to know. They have calls with their high school coaches about guys that are going to be Bulldogs next year. I am fascinated to see how recruiting changes because of this.
And it's not even recruiting within college. You're now recruiting against the G League. You're recruiting against overseas. Whether people liked it or not, this seems to be the only way that college was going to be able to stay, I don't want to say relevant because it was always going to be relevant. But when RJ Hampton went to New Zealand for $1 million a year, came back a first round pick. Who's the guy from Syracuse? Darius Bio.
I know who you're talking about. The guy that went to Oklahoma City.
He went to New Balance. He went for an internship, got paid $1 million. Jalen Green, who's going to be a top 3 pick in the draft, went to the G League. I mean, and was paid whenever he was paid. I don't know what he was paid. I think it was mid 6 figures.
Darius Baisley. Sorry, Darius Baisley.
That's what I thought it was, yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
This at least gives the colleges, because most of us still would prefer to watch college over G League or over a New Zealand professional league. This gives the colleges the best chance they have to get these players that, from a financial standpoint, it doesn't make sense to go if they're not going to be paid, whether we like it or not. And most of us don't, but we understand it.
Will this keep players in college? That's the question that I have.
No.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. It'll get people to college. It'll keep people from, but I don't think if you're a guaranteed first round pick, no.
Right. I'm not talking about the guaranteed guys. I'm talking about, look, there are always more guys that declare for college than there are picks. I mean, especially in the NBA, there are more guys that declare for the pros than there are picks in the NBA draft, given that there are only 2 rounds in the NBA draft. So either one of 2 things is going to happen. The first one I could definitely see happening is adding a 3rd round to the NBA draft and using the G League as a, quote, minor league, where you're drafting for the minor league system. I could see that happening. It happens in every other sport.
Yeah, but I don't think you have 32 G League teams.
You're close. I believe you have 30 right now. I think you have 1 for every team except for 2. So I think you're pretty close on the 1 for 1. And look, if this is a way forward, you can bet your bottom dollar Adam Silver is pushing for 2 more teams. Like, I don't think you'll have a hard time getting 2 teams to buy in. That's number one. And number 2 is that how would this keep those 2nd or 3rd round picks in college for 1 more year? I don't know. Is it if you're earning $1.5 million as a freshman, do you definitely take the shot going to the pros? I don't know that answer.
Well, again, how many people are going to be making $1.5 million but aren't going to be a 1st round pick?
Well, and that's the other question, right? So you have the right now. Remember, and I know I'm taking the extreme. You're taking the Alabama quarterback, who I cannot remember the guy's name at all. Bryce Young, who is a 2nd-year sophomore. Like, he can't be drafted next year. He can't even be in the draft next year. He's going to earn $1.2 million supposedly this year. That's insane. That's insane. The guy has yet to take a snap. And you know this is not going to be the last. This is going to be the first. And I'm interested to see how the NCAA or Congress or somebody limits this, because this can get out of hand really quickly.
The NCAA is not going to.
Well, okay. Well, look, Malcolm said Congress needs to make something, right?
Congress isn't not the way this Congress is. Nothing's going to
Yeah, I get it. Look, we ended the NBA conversation a little early because Malcolm came on early, and I do want to go back to that a little bit with regards to the 2 teams. And the interesting part of those 2 teams, and we're talking about the Suns and the Bucks, is there are not many free agents on either one of these teams.
PJ Tucker in Milwaukee and Chris Paul on Phoenix. I'm not sure who else there is.
And I believe Torian Craig on Phoenix. Like
Torrey Craig, not Torian Craig.
Torrey Craig. Sorry, it's Torrey Craig. There are not many there. The big guys, the Middletons, the Drew Holidays, the Giannis, obviously, even Lopez. Maybe Lopez is a free agent. But if Milwaukee he's on a 2-year deal, right? 2-year deal? The fact is, if they want to keep these teams together, they can do that. And it will be, I think, look, Milwaukee hit what Milwaukee's going to hit. I think they are the best team of what they could be. I don't think there's upside to Milwaukee. I think they are where they are. Now, they happen to be the best team this year due to a confluence of different things. One is the Nets had a whole lot of injuries because Mike Buckholzer was out of a job about 3 weeks ago. I mean, It was that, right? He was down, 3-2 to the Nets, 3-1 to the Nets? And we were writing his gravestone for his job. So, I mean, he was as close to out as he possibly could have been. And tell me if you believe I'm wrong. I think they have hit the pinnacle of where they are. And it's a matter of, can other teams get better than them? They are at their plateau. Giannis may get a little better, but the team itself is where the team is going to be.
Yes and no. The team may blend, because remember, Drew Holiday only came in halfway through the year. The team may blend a little bit better, but I agree, for the most part, this is what they are. And I'm looking through this team. Not only are they're set for next year, and realistically, they're set for the year after that.
Oh yeah, they got a 3-year window. This team has a 3-year window.
Exactly,
and that's all you can ask for in the NBA is a 3-year window.
You do have the big 3 going, big 3 until 23-24, assuming Middleton opts into a $40 million contract, which I think would be pretty logical that he would. But even this year, you only lose PJ Tucker.
If you lose PJ Tucker, because they do get bird rights on PJ, they can go over the cap to sign him if they want.
I'm not saying that he's a free agent.
Correct.
I don't know what they're going to do. Because remember, also Dante DiVincenzo comes back.
Correct. Agreed. Yeah.
So that's and Giannis's brother is also a free agent after this year.
Right. He's going to go right to the guest house of Giannis and say, "Okay, I'm home." Yeah.
After next year, the only free agents that you have additional are Portis and Brian Forbes.
Wait, Lopez signed a 3-year deal?
Lopez is good. Makes $12 million this past year, $13 million next year, and $13 million the year after that.
Wow, that's actually a lot more than I thought he was making. I'm not sure that's a worthwhile deal for the long term. It certainly wasn't a championship.
No, I don't think that's a problem. I mean, DeAndre Jordan signed a 4-year, $40 million deal.
Yeah, but we both hated the DeAndre Jordan deal. So
look, Lopez is still a 13 to 15.8 rebound and a good defensive player.
Yeah.
He will be for a couple of years because his game isn't predicated on speed.
Okay, so does this team have more upside?
That's the question. Not significantly.
So the Suns have more upside. The Suns have a lot more upside.
They do. The question, and this is the obvious one, is what the heck do you do? What happens to Chris Paul?
Well, and Cameron Payne, right? I think is Cameron Payne a free agent too? Because remember, they were playing Payne and Paul together last night. And to have two ball handlers and Devin Booker. And at certain points, they were playing Payne over Paul last night, which was surprising to me, but maybe a sign of things to come.
Yeah, I mean, your top five, Booker, Ayton, Crowder, Saric, Mikal Bridges, have 2 years at least. Ayton and Bridges each have a qualifying offer. But, they'll make runs at keeping him. Cam Johnson, they have another 2 years. Most importantly, they have Jalen Smith for another 5 years.
I love it. So, but he didn't even get a ring.
No, they didn't win. So,
but Torrey Craig did. Torrey Craig got a ring.
Yeah, yes, he did.
I mean, look, I think the Suns have more upside of the two teams, right? They're younger. Yeah, they don't have Giannis. That is true, but there is 3 Giannis's in the entire league, if that. They don't. Does Giannis have more upside, Seth, or has he reached where he is?
No, he's got more upside. He can develop a more consistent mid-range to outside shot. He can become a better free throw shooter. I mean,
than last night. Good luck with that.
Yeah. Obviously, last night.
Let's say it this way: he can become a better free throw shooter on the road.
He can become a better free throw shooter up to last night.
Yes, agreed.
Middleton and Holiday, probably not. They are what they are. Look, Holiday is a really, really good point guard, and I look at the weakness of the Olympic team is as much as I love Damian Lillard, and that he's my favorite player in the league. We've talked about it. He's not a true point guard, and where they need a distributor.
Oh, Drew Holiday's going to save that team. He will save that team.
Which is strange because he's probably the 8th or 9th best player on it. And in a normal year, he wouldn't have made the team.
Yep.
But that is what it is.
Doesn't matter.
Look, Phoenix had – but remember, though, Phoenix is also in a tougher conference. The Lakers, assuming LeBron is 90% of what he was, if Anthony Davis comes back healthy, Jamal Murray can come back healthy, Denver's a threat. We don't know what we're dealing with Kawhi, but the Clippers can be a threat. Dallas has Luka. I don't know what that means, but they have Luka.
And they got Porzingis, the $30 million man.
Exactly. Or also, by the way, Utah won 62 games.
Yeah, you're right. They are they definitely are in a better conference.
You look in the East. Everyone, you brought it up this afternoon. Atlanta's not sneaking up on anybody. The Knicks don't have the talent to compete at the top 3. And I don't think there's a trade available to do it, because if they trade for Damian, they're going to trade everyone they got, except for Randall. The Nets are very, very good if they're healthy. They'll be the favorite. And no one knows what the hell you're dealing with the 76ers. And supposedly Jimmy Butler may want out of Miami. So what do you got on the East?
Well, I love Jimmy Butler. I haven't heard Jimmy Butler wanting out of Miami. I
can't imagine it. It may have just been a random rumor I saw. It's not like I have any inside information on it. I think he's perfectly suited to be in Miami, but Miami may need to be.
Jimmy Butler for Damian Lillard. Like, it just opens up new possibilities. I love that trade, by the way. I love it for both teams. I love it.
Well, then Portland probably trades for a point guard. Maybe they can make a run. If that happens, then they make a run at Lonzo Bell.
Just saying, I love the possibilities that could open up, or even McCollum for Jimmy Butler. Like, I love those possibilities.
McCollum and what for Jimmy Butler? You're not making that trade straight.
But if you're Miami, you're not making that trade, you mean?
No.
Right.
You have Duncan Robinson. You have Tyler Hero.
Duncan Robinson's on a
restricted deal.
Wait to see what offer Duncan Robinson gets before we start talking about how much Miami's going to have Duncan Robinson. That's going to be.
I love that we're less than 24 hours after the NBA season and we're already talking free agent moves.
Well, because remember, our favorite week has already passed and we didn't get to explore it. That's July 4th. We get basketball free agency and NBA and hockey free agency. Seth,
I'll be honest, hockey free agency isn't that interesting to me.
I know, but we got the Kraken coming up on tonight or tomorrow night. Tonight. So the Islanders figure out if they lose Kiefer Bellows. Brian's already been retired for about 15 years. Kiefer Bellows, Josh Bailey, Josh Eberle.
Josh Bailey. Wait a minute, is Brian Bellows his dad? Wasn't Brian Bellows a winger from Minnesota?
Yes, that's his dad.
Wow.
Yay! Golf clap for Seth. He got a hockey player on the Minnesota North Stars and the Washington Capitals. Well done. So, okay, but we have our NBA draft preview next week, which is one of our fun. Well, we have lots of fun all the time, but it's definitely one of our more interesting and yet, how do I say this, underwhelming shows because we never get anything right. But we get the first 3 picks right generally, and after that it's just downhill.
I'm not sure we're going to this time.
No, me neither. But you wanted to talk. So 2 things happened in the last couple of days. First of all, the U.S. women's national team lost last night.
They got whooped.
First time in 40 games that they lost? Seth, talk to me. I know nothing about this team other than they should win. It's like women's basketball. They should win.
Sweden is, I think, the number 5 team in the world. Sweden beat them in the Olympics, I think, last time. And I didn't see the game. I just know they lost 3-0. I don't know any more than that. I'm assuming. Look, they win 2 more games, they'll still go to the group stage. So you go from there.
Okay, and then the men's basketball team finally won a game. That was nice.
Yay! Yeah, that's gonna be one awkward flight for Devin Booker.
Oh, it is, isn't it?
So for those of you who don't know, Devin Booker, Drew Holiday, and Chris Middleton are all going to be on the same flight on Friday.
I didn't know they were all on the same flight. I had no clue.
They're going to be on the same flight.
Awesome.
My guess is Chris and Drew are going to be a little hungover from the parade the day before. I'm assuming the parade's on Thursday. Yeah, that should be fun.
Yeah, not sure how much fun that will be for Devin Booker. Devin Booker did not look happy last night, but he did look exhausted. I mean, that was the thing. These guys, and I know we're going back to the NBA, but these guys, I haven't seen 2 teams at the end of – it was only 6 games, but 2 teams at the end of a series be as exhausted as these 2 were. Like maybe it's the elation of winning a championship and you never see the actual exhaustion. But these 2 teams, first of all, they only played 7 players. Each team only played 7, right? I mean, give or take. They didn't have a deep bench. And I don't
Phoenix did throw in Frank the Tank last night.
Right. Well, I think that was number 7.
Was that number 7?
And I'm not sure that Milwaukee played more than 6. Like they played PJ Tucker. Who else did they play? I mean, these 2 teams.
Portis.
Yeah. Oh, and Portis, right. Yeah. So last night, just looking at the box score real quick. So the starting 5 for Phoenix. Now, remember, there are 48 minutes in a NBA game. 41, 39, 36, 39, 46. Devin Booker played 46 out of 48 minutes. Let's go to the Bucks. 36, 42, 41, 46, 27. Like, so you had 2 guys that played 46 minutes, being Booker and Holiday. Brook Lopez actually played 27, and Portis played 23, along with Pat Connaughton, who played 23. A beautiful 0 for 4 stat.
And a minus 21 and a minus 21 and plus minus.
but he had 8 rebounds, and the rebounds were pretty huge.
He was a beast in this playoffs.
He played as well as you could play for an 8th man, and Jeff Teague played a whole 2 minutes. So by the way, Mark Rubin, Jeff Teague got a ring. He just didn't get a ring for you. I told him. I told him when he said that Jeff Teague was the solution to the point guard problems in Boston. I told him, you are smoking that you think him and Tristan Thompson are the solution.
He in 2015.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we got our last 5 minutes. What do you think?
I think the Olympics start. I think I got 2 weeks of badminton, team handball, and 6 hours. I watched 6 hours of swim trials yesterday while I was at work. To be fair, for those of you who don't know, you wouldn't have known. I was on 6 hours of CPE credits. So I needed something to watch. I watched the swim. And I enjoy it because it's a sports I never watch. And I wouldn't want to watch it on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. But to watch this once every 4 years, to see people who really put their lives on hold, not the basketball players who are making millions of dollars, but the badminton players and the ping pong players and the swing guys who really put their lives on hold to do this. I think it's great.
You know what's interesting, Seth? You have these NIL for the Olympics has been going on for years, right? I mean, you're kind of like, NCAA, where have you been? The other thing is it's 12 hours in the other direction, which makes it easy for Seth to watch because Seth's the late night guy. Surprise, surprise, I did watch every NBA Finals game and every semifinal game this year. So I stayed awake for those. That was you know what, though? I enjoyed watching the NBA this year. I don't know why it was any different this year than it was in the past, but certainly the playoffs, I enjoyed watching. And maybe it was because these two teams were teams. And it's nice to see not dominant handlers. And you're about to smile, and I'm not exactly sure why. But the fact is, Giannis had a great game. Zach, you know nothing. Let's just you know absolutely nothing. And if you'd like to come on the show and debate this issue, we're happy to have you in the middle of August. But we won't have you before that because we have no time. But more importantly, for those that are looking and are wondering, Giannis had, I believe, 51 out of 105, which is not the greatest percentage of points by a player in an NBA final. That would be Michael Jordan, who had 49% of his points in Game 4 against the Suns. And the reason I know this is because I had nothing else to do at 12:30 last night to try and figure this out.
I was trying to put my kid to bed. So I was watching. I called you. I actually had to stop with 40 seconds left. My daughter started hysterically crying. For those of you who don't know, she's 2. So instead of laying with her in bed, I picked her up and just put her on my shoulder, let her cry on my shoulder while I watched the last 20 seconds of the game because I just didn't want to miss the end of the game.
It's Morgan's Mario Chalmers moment. That's all that it is.
There you go. Happy birthday, Jakey.
Happy birthday, Jakey. And next week, NBA draft, and we'll see you there. Okay. Have a good one, everybody. See you. Bye.